Hello and welcome to a new edition of You Are My Boro. Bit of a confession first. Time's got away with us a little bit this week. We're about halfway through Friday afternoon, but we wanted to have a quick meet up, a quick look back at the week that was. Obviously, a look ahead to the Millwall game tomorrow and a bit of a chat about Michael Carrick's side and how things are looking. We're going to have a bit of a blast through. We will have a much more detailed, lengthier vid pod at the start of next week, I promise you. But we wanted to have a catch-up before the weekend. You all right, Dom?
I am. You know what I'm doing? I should have mentioned this before. And we haven't had any service station chatting here for a while, have we?
We haven't.
Did you see the thing with the Boro fans at Burnley?
Oh, I did. Yeah. Which services was that then?
So it was Skelton Lake. And obviously, so I knew a couple of lads on there. So the breakdown, a close 15-minute walk from Skelton Lake.
This is on the way to Burnley.
Yeah, Storm Dara is obviously raging at the time. So yeah, the breakdown on the way there. Sorry, they don't break down. They're involved in a minor crash. No one's hurt. They end up having to trek 15, 20 minutes to Skelton Lake. Watch the first half there. So we did a story on it. But then the glory in the days that followed, I was quote tweeted by the service station.
Oh, hey!
And I can't find it. And I can't remember what day it was.
That's what you want. That's what you want.
Well, I thought this is
if you can't get a free coffee and a flapjack out of that, something's going on.
God, give me. God, I can't believe I haven't. This is a shocking start, isn't it? I can't believe I didn't check this beforehand. Here we go. Extra Services UK. We're happy our Leeds Skelton Lake services could help Middlesbrough supporters stuck on the M1 to enjoy themselves. We strive to go the extra mile for all visitors, and we're glad we could help brighten up their journey by showing the game. We hope everyone got home safe. There you go.
There we go. What a day.
Talk about social media highlights. There we are.
If you can get that from TB, then you really have completed a life hack there, haven't you?
Fair play to those fans, by the way. I mean, trekking 20 odd minutes in the storm, watching the first half in the services, and then going home by 10 o'clock.
That's some effort. That really is some effort.
Right, anyway.
Let's very quickly look back on the week that was then. We'll not go through the minutiae of it, but a draw at Burnley in what was pretty good performance, really, from Boro, let's be honest. But then the defeat at Leeds, not an awful performance, but 1 point from a possible 6. Where does that leave Boro? Where does that leave the whole mood of things ahead of Millwall at home at the weekend?
Well, I think first things first. Saturday feels important, doesn't it? You're there. You're there at the Riverside.
Yeah, I'm going at the weekend.
When you look at Sheffield United now, 11 points, Leeds 10 points. We'll get to that, and we asked Michael Carrick about that at Rockcliffe on Thursday. But it's hardly ideal, is it? Giving teams of that quality that points gap at this stage. In terms of the two games, I thought the Burnley performance was really encouraging in filthy conditions, a tough first half to get themselves in front. I thought Boro were excellent in the second half. And when I'm sat there in the press room afterwards and Scott Parker comes in and says he's disappointed with a point and he felt they were the team winning it, I kind of look twice. Then I did the same with Michael Carrick at Ellen Road on Tuesday because I was surprised by just how positive he was with his assessment of that game. Now, we know, don't we? We know from the early stages of last season when things weren't going to plan, Carrick will defend his players. He'll go all out to defend his players, won't he, after the game? And whatever the message has been in the dressing room won't necessarily be the message when he speaks to us. But I thought Boro were really poor at Leeds on Tuesday. Leeds are good. That's 9 home wins in a row now. I think they've lost once, is there, of 11 games at home, maybe. Best home record in the division and all that. But the first half, I thought Boro were desperately poor. And then they had a 20-minute spell and then kind of throw it away again by conceding a cheap goal. I get that Carrick was encouraged by that spell in the second half and how good Boro got a grip. And I get that he's encouraged by the disappointment of only taking 1 point against teams like that. But I didn't think Boro were great on Tuesday night, which I think all adds to now that, you're looking at the coming games and we'll get them running across the bottom now, starting against Millwall tomorrow. Then you've got Plymouth away, then Sheffield Wednesday at home. Those 3 games feel big.
Yeah.
It's like 7 points, 9 points. It feels like Boro need to get some points on the board now. And I know we can't get obsessed with the league table at this stage, but equally, we've seen in the last 2 years what happens when you give teams too much of a head start.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that, and you know, I know that there's a piece going online. I think it's probably in the morning. Is it? It's definitely in tomorrow's paper that you've written with Michael Carrick, and Carrick kind of saying, look, you know, we were in a worse position in each of the last 2 seasons at this point, which is true. But then the obvious response to that is, yeah, and you failed to make A, the playoffs last season, B, the top 2 of the season before, largely because you were playing catch up all through the second half of the season. And you know, you're right, Boro are right in amongst it still. But the worry if they don't get a point haul like you're talking about from these next 3 games is you're potentially kicking on into the start of the new year with Boro maybe outside the top 6. And like you say, potentially with the top 2, 12, 15 points away, which, you know, for all that we've said, there isn't a standout team in this league. Leeds and Sheffield United are starting to look like 2 teams who probably aren't going to lose an awful lot of games in the second half of the season.
And I think the frustration is, I was having this conversation with one of my mates yesterday, I think the frustration is what Boro showed at Burnley and in flashes against Leeds is that they are just as good as these teams. Burnley are no better than Boro. Boro are a match for anyone on the day. We've seen that. I think that's really the frustration of the first half of the season. Yeah, Boro aren't in an awful position, but it could and should be better. And it just puts a bit of pressure on, doesn't it, in the second half of the season when have Boro lost 7 games now? Leeds have lost, 2 and 3? You know, yeah. Are Leeds going to lose 7 games all season? You're needing a run, and you're needing those teams at the top to slip up. Then again, I had a Leeds fan getting in touch on social media in the last couple of days and saying, just look at how far behind we were at this stage last season, or at a certain stage last season. It is too early. So I get that as well, and clearly that's Carrick's point. There's a lot of football still to play, as he says.
And any reflection on that Leeds game has to be couched in the fact that, as you say, Leeds are a very good side at home. They're largely unbeatable this season. So yeah, take all that on board. But it still feels like with Boro, especially away from home, there's a 10-minute wobble in them. In any game, there's the potential for a spell where they just look wobbly for 10, 15 minutes. And we've seen it repeatedly, not just this season, but through Carrick's reign. Often in those spells, they're conceding a couple of goals. And you're not going to win games if you're doing that. No,
and I think that was what was so encouraging about Burnley. It felt like a real mature performance, a performance of steel, like to weather the storm in more senses than one, really, in the first half, when Burnley were on top. To come through that, to get a point, but really they should have had more, but to get a point when they could have so easily gone under, that felt like, that's what you need to do, don't you, to grind things out. And the Leeds, again, Leeds are really good. So obviously that's the caveat here, but Leeds kind of takes you back to the Watford game, the Blackburn game, although you know, there's Blackburn shouldn't have scored, should they? It's clearly offside. So that one maybe shouldn't count. But games where you're looking and thinking, like, Boro have thrown away points there. Watford, Boro shouldn't have not won, never mind lost. And it's those costly points, which I think brings us back to the question of, we've had this a few times, haven't we? Are Boro streetwise enough? Is naivety still costing them? Leeds' second goal on Tuesday night, they give the ball away. Hackney plays it into McGree, I think it was, in midfield. Every touch from McGree, they give the ball away. 2 or 3 minutes earlier, they'd done almost identical with Dan Barlaser and got away with it. Dieng makes a save from James. Carrick talks about moments a lot. Well, you've got to learn from those moments, haven't you? And I don't think this is about like the way Carrick plays and the approach and the style and all that. We know that isn't going to change. But it's game intelligence, isn't it? Managing the moments in a game and realising what's needed in that moment. I thought it was crying out for Howson a bit earlier on Tuesday night, just to bring a bit of composure and experience to things, really. And I think that's a challenge. And I kind of tried to put that to Carrick, probably clumsily, in his press conference on Thursday. And he kind of said, like, look, we believe the way we're doing things is hurting sides. We think we look at the positive spells of the last 2 games and the way we're approaching games, the way we're playing is hurting sides, and we take confidence from that. So yeah, that's clearly the challenge. The other challenge, when you look at Millwall this Saturday, is they're likely to come and make life difficult, aren't they? Probably not show too much attacking ambition, which is a unique challenge in itself that Boro have found problematic at times.
Yeah, well, it's not that unique, is it? And like you say, we've seen teams doing it to Boro, and it has been an issue. So in terms of that Millwall game, I mean, I think Boro's team at the minute is interesting, because I think if you look at Boro, okay, Boro's best 11, if you like, or Dieng probably starting goal, although there is a question to be asked there about whether it should be Dieng or Bryn. Right back's up in the air at the minute, Dyke, Steele and Ayling. Centre half is up in the air at the minute. Clark, Edmondson at the moment are probably the 2, just because they're the only 2 available. But when Fry gets himself back, when Van den Berg gets back, who's going to play there? Borges is probably playing at left back because he's the only cab on the rank at the minute. Hackney, definitely first choice. But who plays with Hackney? Dork and Azaz, definitely first choice. But who's your best bet on the left? Who's your best bet up front? You can make the argument that a couple of weeks ago, and I take it, we were kind of saying, well, that's great because there's a lot of players in form and it's selection dilemmas. Yeah, okay. But it also a little bit feels like we're back to saying, well, there's probably only 3 or 4 players in this Boro team at the minute that are playing so well that you couldn't conceive leaving them out.
Yeah, and Fry, I thought Fry was a miss. We've talked about like Edmondson and Clark, both really good defenders. How effective are they as a pair? We've talked about that since Sunderland, haven't we? Since the Sunderland game. Thought Boro desperately missed the snap, really, of Morris in midfield on Tuesday. Borges had a rough old time, but I don't think he was helped by McGree in front. And when Carrick said on Thursday in his press conference, he kind of let on the illness is back around the camp again, and then surprisingly revealed that McGree is one of those suffering and has got a chest infection, and just makes you think, well, was he under the weather on Tuesday? Obviously not that they knew about, but was that, maybe I'm being too kind on him, but McGree was off colour on Tuesday at Ellen Road. And then the centre forward, Lath Conway, well, I think both are really effective options there. It's horses for courses. But yeah, there are certain areas of the pitch where, if you're Dyke Steele and you build on that Burnley performance and really have a good solid run of displays now, you can nail down that spot, can't you? Morris goes straight back in when he's fit again. Fry, I think, goes straight back in. I think Fry and Van den Berg both go straight in when they're fit. Yeah. I think they're your first choice pairing. The Dieng question, I think, is a fair one. The Leeds goal, maybe it was being a bit harsh to criticise him, but I still thought it was an unconvincing attempt. The Burnley goal, I think you've got to be... I know the wind's howling and it's a brutal night. I think you've got to be making it better, not making it as easy as that if you're the keeper in that scenario.
So you've mentioned there that, illness kind of back in the camp. Obviously, it's hard to get a gauge on who that involves and everything. But where are we... do you feel in terms of team use? Where are we at with Van den Berg? Where are we at with Morris? Where are we at with Fry?
Van den Berg, I have no idea, because he was asked about Van den Berg and Engel, and he kind of said, well, they're back in training, but didn't really let on as to how close they are. So I'm not sure. I mean, he wasn't in the squad on Tuesday, so it'd be a surprise for him to go.
Yeah, straight in, I'm with you, though. I feel they need him. Especially if there's no Fry.
Yeah,
Clark and Edmondson together for me doesn't really work.
No, I think you need a composed reader of the game and passer of the ball in there, don't you? Really, to especially with the way Carrick wants to play. And Van den Berg's the best defender, isn't he?
Yeah.
Van den Berg's a big. We've talked about him at length in the past. Fry, don't know. It depends how he is. Carrick said yesterday, obviously, he'd been under the weather. McGree has had this chest infection. The fact that he name checked McGree makes me think he's not going to play.
He's not right, yeah.
But there might be one or two others, and maybe Carrick just didn't let on. We'll have to see. Morris is back on the grass without sounding like a football manager, but he's not back.
That's That can mean anything or nothing, that, can't it? He's back on the grass.
Do us a favour, Aidan, just go and have a run out there so I can tell him.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
So, but then interestingly, he said you're looking at a couple of weeks. Well, he's not going to make Plymouth a week on Saturday, is he? Boxing Day.
Maybe. Yeah, maybe.
Maybe. I think he'll bring Howson back into the midfield on Saturday.
Tomorrow.
Yeah, I think he'll bring Howson back into midfield. I think he'll play Bergzorg on the left.
Yeah.
Aylin, Dijksteel, bit of a coin toss, isn't it? And I think probably the same with Latelath and Conway, a bit of a coin toss. I probably sway towards Latelath. I don't think he did anything wrong, Latelath, on Tuesday night. Pressed well from the front, defended from the front, came back and nicked a couple of balls off Leeds' foot when they were in around the box. Didn't have much to feed on at the other end. But yeah, and Neil Harris. I mean, just finally before we wrap up,
I was just going to say that. What are you thinking with Millwall? Because obviously, no Josh Coburn. There wouldn't have been Josh Coburn anyway. Obviously, he's only on loan, but clearly Josh is out with that metatarsal injury. We won't see him until next year at some stage. But a bit of a Millwall bombshell this week with Neil Harris announcing that he's going to be stepping down. Obviously, in his second spell as Millwall boss. I think most people from the outside would say doing a really, really good job there. Got them in and amongst the kind of promotion discussions. I mean, what do you make of that?
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, when you read between the lines, as is so often the case with managerial exits with clubs, this in the modern day, you kind of look and think, is there a bit of a disagreement on the direction the club's heading and maybe certain decisions they want to make? Harris in his press conference this week, when he spoke after the Sheffield United game, talking about it's the right time for me and the right time as a club. Then interestingly, he talked about how when he came back in February, it was only ever meant to be until the end of the season, but clearly he'd done such a good job, he was convinced to stay. I think when Millwall announced the next manager, we might well, and we get a feel for what type of manager it is, we might well have a better idea as to what's going on there. But
we thought that with Coventry and they ended up with Frank Lampard.
Well, yeah, exactly.
What's Steven Gerrard doing?
I was just about to say Gerrard, although they'll have to pay him a fair bit to get him out of his current.
Going out of Saudi Arabia, yeah, true.
They've lost the last two, have they, Millwall, or drawn one and lost one, and they slipped to 13th in the table, I think. But I don't think that's probably doing them credit for just how impressive a start they made. They were unbeaten in 9 before that run came to an end. He's made them Millwall again, hasn't he? I went to Millwall with Boro when, was it Joe Edwards, the previous manager, was in charge? And clearly you're aware you're still in the den. But if you weren't aware of your surroundings and only watched the teams in front, you would never have guessed that this was Millwall you were watching. I think certain teams, certain clubs always have to be in tune with what type of club and what type of team they are, don't they? And Harris clearly knows Millwall better than anyone. And it's a big appointment, isn't it? Because for all, they've had a brilliant start to the season. We're still at the stage and the championship's still compact enough where if they get it right, then they'll be looking up and looking to force their way in. But if they get it wrong, they could very easily get sucked in below. We've seen that countless times, haven't we, with different clubs? So it'll be interesting. As for what it'll mean for Saturday's game, well, Carrick was asked about that on Thursday, and he said, I don't know. We've just got to look after ourselves. Yeah, they might be desperate to sign off on a high for him and give him a fond farewell, but they lost against Sheffield United, and he talked about how it's been a really difficult few days or 48 hours at that point. So we'll have to see. You'd probably say Boro could do without it, I think.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you?
Yeah, I think you're right. I guess what you would say is it should be an easier game for Boro at the Riverside than it would have been at the Den if all this had been going on and it had been Harris's last game and a chance for the fans to have a proper send-off. And I think that's a much more awkward situation for Boro than, all of that going on, but it being at the Riverside.
You're there then. What do you reckon?
I think Boro will win. I do. I think Boro will win. I think, for all that we've said, the last two games, but Millwall are not Leeds and they're not Burnley. And I think Boro will have 2-0 Boro. Yeah. I'll go with that. Hackney after about 43. So just as it's getting a bit edgy towards half time, Hackney 43, and then Let's Go Dork 65.
Just to see it off. Turn to the bench, fresh legs.
Yeah.
I fancy Boro. I go maybe 1-0. But I think a comfortable enough 1-0. Yeah. And then it suddenly changes again, doesn't it? Because then you go to Plymouth thinking, well,
then you go to crisis hit Wayne Rooney's Plymouth thinking if we win this, then we're rolling into Christmas with 2 wins on the bounce, and you're definitely in the top 6, and you're right back on it.
Well, we'll be back early next week, looking back on that Millwall game and having a more in-depth look ahead to the Plymouth game at the weekend and the festive fixtures as well. Do subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. We really appreciate that. And as we always say, just get in touch, shout up on socials or in the comment section on here if there's something you want us to discuss. We will do a Q&A. I know we've mentioned it, but we'll do a Q&A ahead of the January window opening and discussing what's likely to happen or not happen then. If you're listening on any podcast platforms, then rate and review as well. Enjoy the game on Saturday if you're there. Keep your eye out on the Echo site and obviously in the paper on Monday for full analysis and reaction from Scott at the Riverside, and we'll be back next week.
Enjoy it if you're watching it in the services.
Take care. See you.